Every year, the cost of FPV keep rising. It's not just the price tag on components that's creeping up, with the cost of living on an ever upward trend. Justifying spending money on FPV is becoming increasingly difficult. I don't need to remind you of the relentless money pressures that we face in day-to-day life, especially from a loved one when they question the amount of spending on FPV. Plus, it's not easy to explain your passion or justify it, especially when you're confronted about yet another package of drone parts arriving at the front door. But what if I told you that flying FPV could still be within your means, and that despite the apparent rising costs, there's a way to avoid some serious financial mistakes? Before we delve into all of these common financial mistakes that many FPV pilots make, it's important to understand that we're going to need to be a little bit more wiser and thoughtful when it comes to making buying decisions, especially around which gear we do buy, but more importantly, which gear we don't buy. But what happens when the prices are so low that they just seem like too good to resist? Well, this could be a trap lying in wait. Picture this: you're browsing websites like AliExpress or Banggood, and you stumble upon some parts that are priced so cheap that they seem too good to be true. And you're tempted to save a few bucks and go ahead and buy them. But is this truly a wise choice? However, beneath the veneer of savings lies poor quality, discontinued, or even counterfeit parts. Yet, you then get trapped into this vicious cycle where parts break or fail, and they will. Then replacements are just hard to find, so you end up spending more than you initially saved on a complete new setup replacing those parts. Instead of falling for the trap of these cheap and fake or clone parts, make some smart investments in budget-friendly, yet high-quality components from reputable manufacturers. Yes, this might require a higher upfront cost, but the reliability as well as ease of finding replacement parts can save you a ton of money, not to mention hassle in the long run. And while being a savvy shopper when it comes to quality is one challenge, what happens when the issue isn't about quality at all, but about keeping up with the latest releases? And especially when manufacturers launch seemingly new and better products every month. It's easy to get carried away and find yourself perpetually chasing upgrades for gear that your existing stuff still functions perfectly. So are you really falling prey to this costly trap? For instance, if you've got a perfectly working CADX Vista, replacing it with the brand new DJI-03 Air unit may appear to be a really good upgrade, but it's actually an unwarranted expense. Here, the old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it holds true. And it pays to stick with your current gear if it's serving you well, and upgrade only once you've killed it and run it into the ground. Having said that, what about gear that's sitting idle, or what if you're just starting out and need to keep your initial costs down? Many FPV pilots often let unused gear gather dust and outright refuse to consider buying used equipment. When you let your FPV gear sit idle, you're essentially just leaving money on the table or on the wall. Yes, you might take a hit selling for something for less than you initially paid, but hoarding unused parts is just wasted money. And it's time to embrace the secondhand market, both as a buyer, but also as a seller. So you can sell what you don't need and then use that money to fund the gear that you do. And look, being resourceful on the secondhand market is a clever strategy. What about when it comes to purchasing new parts? Could there be a hidden pitfall around our desire to simply go for the best? Well, there is, and it's the temptation of overspeccing. You see, overspecification not only leads to unnecessary expenses, but it also creates additional problems. You see, going for an F7 flight controller when an F4 would suffice, or a 60 amp ESC when a 45 amp is perfectly capable of doing the job. If you bought 2000 kV motors because you thought you'd get more power, when really a 1750 or 1800 kV motor would be just right. What this can do is actually create additional problems like more stress on your ESC as well as on your battery, which leads to accelerated wear and tear and even smoking an ESC or puffing a battery. You see, the key is to be smart and not just buy big. Choose the gear for the right specifications and consider your needs as well as the cost of benefit ratio of making new purchases. And a good example of this is if you're thinking of upgrading from analog to digital and you're tossing up between DJI-03 as well as CADX Walksnail. Well, there's a difference in price. The DJI-03 system is absolutely amazing, but at a $70 premium per VTX, is it that amazing to justify that additional cost? And then when you extrapolate that out over 3 or 4 quads, well, you're looking at least $210 difference. you need to look at the cost to benefit ratio and decide whether you really need that ultra high spec or if something more reasonable is going to do the job. This leads me to another mistake that beginners, and I myself, have been caught up in, and that's having a mixed bag of different drones with different parts. And yeah, it might seem exciting to have a variety of quads to fly, it quickly becomes a logistical nightmare when trying to manage your fleet. When a part breaks, you're going to need to buy a one-off specific part, and that's going to make maintenance costly and time consuming. Remember, when it comes to managing your quads, consistency is your best friend. It lets you buy more of the same spare parts, like extra arms, an extra flight controller, and extra motors or a motor belt. And in the long run, having all of these spare parts not only saves you time, but it also saves you money, because you're not having to worry about the extra cost of shipping for an individual component. Speaking of saving time, there's something else that seems like a quick solution that might not be the best choice after all, and that's being seduced into bind and fly quads. They seem like a good deal. After all, someone has done all the hard work for you. They've built the frame, they've done the soldering, they've done the part selection. But believe it or not, they might not actually be the best option. But what I noticed is that a lot of the companies that sell a lot of bind and fly drones, well, all of their components don't end up in the high-end builds of the most notable pilots, yet their products are similarly priced. And that's because these companies often overprice individual components, which are typically mid-tier at best, and when a component breaks, you then need a replacement, so you're stuck in their overpriced parts circle. And the solution here lies in building your own quads. This allows you to choose the best components within your specific budget and avoid overpriced parts, as well as the maintenance and repairs become more cost effective in the long run. Plus, you're not stuck in their particular ecosystem. Once you've built and optimized your fleet, what's the next step? Well, navigating the unpredictable world of FPV. And that comes down to contingency planning, which can become your budget's best friend. You see, planning to fail for the unexpected leads us to often an overlooked mistake. Any seasoned FPV pilot will tell you things don't always go to plan in the field, such as a sudden crash because he pushed a little too hard, smoked motor, or a smoked ESC. And without a contingency plan, you might find yourself grounded and unable to enjoy the rest of your flying session, or worse, be forced to go and buy a one-off part just to fix your quad. The trick to avoiding this pitfall is simple, and that's always be prepared for the unexpected. So when you go and buy a quad, buy some spare parts for it. Invest in equipment that is durable as well as resilient, and this way you can ensure you're always able to repair your gear without adding any extra expense no matter what happens. So what's the overarching solution? Well, above all, it's about maintaining a cost-effective strategy to sidestep these financial mistakes, and that lies in embracing the skill of learning how to fix and build FPV quads. When you build your own drone, it not only saves you from the trap of overpriced bind and fly quads, relying on inferior or cheap parts, but also grants you the flexibility to make smart choices tailored to your budget and your needs. So watch one of these videos here on how to build your very own 5-inch freestyle drone. I'm Darren Allett. Until next time, don't forget to send it.